have a practice or are you running a business? Valuation is the ultimate KPI.
Hey there, it's Mike Langford. Welcome to the Modern Financial Advisor podcast, brought to you by Trulytics by Envestnet. That's right, this is going to take some getting used to. Trulytics was acquired by Envestnet a few months ago, and we are back at it recording new episodes of the show. I'm super excited about the lineup that's coming, and you are absolutely going to love it. For the first episode, we have Julie Pinkerton, CEO of Evozen, to talk about their solution Client First. Client First is a collaborative community / matchmaking service for financial professionals. No, it's not a dating app. Take it easy, will you? Client First makes it easy for financial advisors to connect with other professionals like estate attorneys, CPAs, financial planners, and so on, so that you can scale your business or spend more of your time doing the things that you love and less of the stuff you don't. You are absolutely going to love this episode. Julie is amazing. Okay, before we get to the conversation with Julie, please do make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Amazon, the YouTubes, or wherever you like to get your podcast jam on. And by the way, notice the new Envestnet Blue we have going on with the show's podcast and video art. It looks fantastic. Sorry, Jeremy. I know orange is your favorite color, but no more orange for you. We'll slip in a little bit here and there. Anyway, okay. And as always, if you have a question or a suggestion for a guest or a topic for the show, hit us up, podcast@trulytics.com, or ping us on the socials. We're active on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. You can find us. I'm real easy to find. I'm at Mike Langford everywhere, okay? All right, let's get this matchmaking session on. Let's do it. Julie Pinkerton, so wonderful to see you. Welcome to the Modern Financial Advisor podcast.
Thank you. Very happy to be here, Mike. Appreciate your time.
Me too. This is fantastic. I've been really looking forward to this show. I was telling you about this when we fired it up and we were in our conversation before we clicked the record button. Like, there are certain people who you meet, even though you and I have only met each other virtually, where you're like, I love talking to this person. From the moment you showed up on my screen, I'm like, I love talking to Julie. She's got such a wonderful smile and presence about you. It was fantastic. I know this is going to be one of our best episodes ever.
Aw, thank you. I appreciate that.
Fantastic. Well, you can't say that about everybody. It is funny. Like, some people are just naturally warm, friendly, and easy to chat with. And so I always welcome those because, as you can tell, I'm kind of naturally like this all the time. This is how I roll. And so, frankly, the business you have started, Client First by Evozen, is really up the alley for somebody with your personality, because, frankly, as you described it to me, it's a matchmaking service for financial professionals, for the finance industry. And that was a big, every once in a while, I spend a lot of time with startups. I see a lot of fintech startups. And sometimes I kind of go, okay, yeah, another one of those financial wellness startups. Okay, I've seen a bunch of those or whatever. But when you introduced me to Client First, I have to say it's one of the first ones in a long time where I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And then I had the thought that I think many of our members of our audience had, which is, why didn't somebody do this before? Like, wait a minute, this doesn't exist already? Why is this just happening now? So let's jump into it. What is Client First, and how does this matchmaking service work?
Well, Client First is the only national, fully diverse digital community that's out there for financial professionals and all the people that I feel support the flow of money for a client. And so that's everything from, insurance professionals, of course, the financial advisors, tax attorneys, CPAs, trust officers, all of those people that are out there trying to make it all work for a client. And the problem is that a lot of people have no idea how to find them. So I'm just making that a little bit easier for them.
That's great. So take me a little bit back a bit before you decided to start Client First, because you had some epiphanies there, and you shared those with me during our prep call, and I thought they were pretty eye-opening, because this is the type of solution that obviously it takes an effort to get off the ground. Any startup does, any company that anybody who's ever started a company knows it takes a while. And frankly, the financial advisors who are joining us today in the audience know that building their business takes time, right? I talked to lots of financial advisors and they all say it takes about 5 years before they get to that escape velocity and so forth. So they know there's work ahead of them. So you're sitting there and all of a sudden you're like, hey, this new thing needs to exist. How did that come about? Where was that aha moment for you?
Absolutely. I was in the corporate world, and in my last position, I was leading a team that was working with financial advisors, RIAs, hybrid broker dealers, etc. And one of the things that, I was taking a look at was what are the three biggest problems that face financial advisors? And they were very specifically scaling a practice profitably, helping women and minorities to be able to stick in the business, and then, of course, helping mature advisors be able to transition successfully at the highest possible price. And one of the things that I saw was, looking at some of the statistics, was that, for instance, for women, even though there have been intensive diversity issues or initiatives for over a decade, the numbers really hadn't moved. And one of the things that, I'm sitting there thinking, somebody needs to do something about that. And then all of a sudden you realize that, well, maybe some of that somebody is me. And so in putting together my plans for that year, which I always did a plan B instead of New Year's resolutions. And so in that plan B, what I was looking at was, what do I need to do? And so those three prongs became what is now Evozen and now the Client First platform. So those three legs is trying to be able to make all of those, parameters move in a favorable direction.
I love it. I love that and I want to dive into like each of those legs, if you will. The first one that really jumped out to me was that scaling concept. And you mentioned talking about scaling, and that's one of the things that's been near and dear to my heart over the years because, if you're an individual advisor at a certain point in time, you do run up against capacity issues, right? It just happens, right? Like there's only so many hours in the day. But you addressed another capacity issue that I think is really, really important for us to highlight. And it really gets to the crux of Client First. To kind of set the stage, I just got home from a tour of LSU with my son. He was a senior in high school. He started looking at colleges and, which ones to apply. And he loved the school, and it looks like it's on the top of his list, which is great. The trip was a good and worthwhile investment. But while we were there, we get to meet with an admissions counselor. And he echoed some of the advice that I often give my son and my daughter, which is lean into your strengths. My son is not a great math guy. He's always had a challenge with it going back to elementary school. It's part interest, it's just not his thing, right? And like my son, like we all have weaknesses. Some are based on aptitude or lack thereof, and some are based on our preferences, right? Or lack thereof for preferences, right?
Yes.
So simply put, there are things that we're just not good at and some things we just really don't enjoy doing. And that's true for everyone. So, but the thing is that I think you really hit on with Client First is, hey, the time advisors spend on these so-called weaknesses or trying to overcome these weaknesses, that might be what's holding them back, right?
Very much so. Very much so. Yes. We all come to the table with unique strengths. I was a student of Dan Sullivan's strategic coach for 7 years. And that was one of the most major things that I took away from it, was that there are things that we uniquely do very, very well. And there are things we don't do so well.
Yeah.
And a lot of advisors think that in terms of scaling, that they need to do more and keep adding services and keep adding various different, ways to be able to attract clients to their practice. And unfortunately, a lot of times they forget that they can do a lot of effort and expend a lot of money, but that doesn't always translate to the bottom line in terms of profitability. And one of the fastest ways that they can actually do more is to do less. And that's one of the hearts of how we want to be able to encourage organic growth. is that we want people to understand that, first of all, centers of influence have been, you know, absolutely affirmed to be one of the very best ways to be able to organically grow a practice. And so by taking on other team members and forming a very tight team around a client, we can overcome our weaknesses by drawing on the strengths and unique abilities of others. And if we do that properly, especially through the added advantage of behavioral analytics, then we have the true ability to really communicate well with our client the very best things. And that enables us to get to the bottom line more profitably and quicker.
I love it. I love it. It's, the easiest example for me is, again, I'm a people person. I love interacting with folks, but some of the clerical stuff, if you will, preparing documents or whatever is just, it's a drudgery for me. Right. And I think the same is likely true for many financial advisors. Right. I always look at there's people either get into this business because they are numbers people that, hey, I just love finance. That's my jam. I can't get enough of it. Or they're people, right? They like sales. They like the relationships and so forth. They're usually not both, frankly. They're usually not both of those things. And so they're usually doing one side of the equation grudgingly, right? Now, for the ones who are people and don't really like actually managing the finances, well, a lot of times the firm that they work with or they came up through has some built in, like, oh yeah, just choose one of your portfolio manager. He or she will or go ahead and run the portfolios, and you just have to work with the client. But at a certain point in time, if you're growing your business, especially if you're an RIA or independent advisor, you're going to have a lot more of the pieces to it. And to your point, some of the services, not only are they required in the business that you want to offer, but they benefit you in your client relationship. Like as an example, you mentioned in our prep call, estate planning, right? Well, most advisors aren't estate planners. They don't, right? So let's dig in a little bit. Like, how does Client First go about connecting folks and ensuring it's a good match?
Yes, that is a fantastic question, because again, it goes to the heart of what we're trying to be able to do here. When an advisor is looking for another advisor, a lot of times what I have seen is within, groups I have seen on social media, somebody says, hey, I'm looking for a good estate planning attorney in Silver Springs, Maryland. And sometimes they get an answer, sometimes they don't. But most of the time, the kind of answer that they typically get is, hey, my partner was playing golf with somebody last week. Pretty sure he was an attorney. My partner says he was a good guy. And that's about all the vetting that they're doing. And that may or may not be a good fit for the financial planner, much less the client. So what we put into Client First and spent, the bulk of our development costs on was an incredibly robust search engine, so that you have the ability to be able to vet advisors from all over the country. And you can do that not only geographically and by what kind of whether they're, again, like for instance, an estate attorney in Silver Springs, Maryland. But I like to use one of our first visionaries. She's in upstate New York. And if you're looking for a financial advisor in that area who has over 20 years of experience, is an African-American female, and oh, by the way, happens to speak Japanese, Client First can help put you in touch with that kind of person. And we can also ensure, because of the behavioral analytics that come from DNA behavior, we can make sure that that person can communicate well with your client or help bridge your communications so that you're able to do that much better for them also.
I love, first of all, that's incredibly specific. It would be awesome if somebody actually did go through that algorithm and they're looking for that list of traits. But you hit upon something that I think is really important, right? Most folks in financial advisors aren't super skilled necessarily or experienced in vetting other professionals that they're going. Usually it's like, okay, I'll go with this guy or this lady as a partner for that solution, and it either works or it doesn't work, and then they try another one or whatever. And there was no I guess for lack of a better phrase, a programmatic way or systematic way for them to select a high quality candidate. And we've seen lots of engines sort of designed to do this for financial consumers, right? There's lots of solutions out there that are like, hey, find a financial advisor.
Right.
What kind of advisor where do you live? Is it important that they live in the same area as you? Do you want a male or a female advisor? You can go down the list of that type of stuff. The Client First is the first one for advisors to find other partners. It's really, really exciting.
It's important too because of the fact that clients are moving around a whole lot more. One of the things that COVID did for us was to be able to show us that we can work truly from anywhere. And so a lot of clients are exiting certain states, certain cities, and moving. And one of the ways that an advisor can really establish value with them and be able to hold on to that AUM for not exiting their practice is to be able to reach out to them and say, hey, I see that you're moving 5 states away. And what if I was to be able to help you replicate all of your other advisors here? I would still be able to lead this conversation since I already know your portfolio, know the things that you're looking to do and accomplish. You don't have to repeat that, but I can help you find that CPA. I can help you find that business broker, commercial property and casualty, insurance, tax and legal, anything that you need. I can help you find that, even though I may not even ever have stepped foot in that state.
Well, it's such a good point that you bring up, because the reality is at some point in time, most people are, maybe it's not most, but it's a good chunk of your portfolio of clients, right? Your client roster are going to move somewhere. And that actually might be in their financial plan. They're like, hey, when I retire, I want to go to Florida. When I retire, I want to go wherever. I want to live abroad. I don't know what it is, but people plan to, they move. And sometimes they move for a variety of different reasons. And that's in one of the top few reasons why clients will change financial advisors, because you're not around anymore. But now with modern technology like Zoom and the like, you can stay connected and see your clients face to face. But to your point, there will always be the need for some form of local touch. And it could, because they might need an estate attorney. They might need, a good mortgage broker, like having that person in your network or whatever it is.
Yes.
In their neighborhood that would be helpful. And why should an advisor be limited to only professionals in his or her backyard?
Exactly. We used to have to rely upon the fact that wherever we lived, that there was a good CPA or a good estate, planning attorney. Now we don't have to worry about that. If they're not good, we can move to a different city and bring in that expertise. But it's also another area that an advisor can help scale their practice, because if they want to be able to step up the quality of clients that they're attracting, they just simply step up the quality of centers of influence that they're working with, because they're going to be bringing clients to the table too. So it's a great way to be able to immediately ratchet up what you're doing and still continue to do the things that you do very well.
I love it. It's funny. I didn't even think about that, it's another way of expanding your reach, right? Like as an advisor, why are you, yes, sure, you want to continue to serve your clients should they move to a different place. But why should you be limited to adding new clients just in your local nexus? To me, this is really exciting because, look, many advisors might not live in a major metropolitan area. They might live in a rural community where, it's limited, right? There's a couple of thousand people that live in that community and only a handful of them have the assets, whatever, the capacity to really work with you. So what? Build a big network. You might be able to reach clients all over the country. It doesn't really matter if they're in your whatever small town America.
Exactly. Yeah. And sometimes small town America is where you want to live, but that doesn't necessarily mean where you want to work.
That's right. I'm not a rural guy. I just, I can appreciate rural. I don't mind visiting rural and staying there occasionally for a vacation or whatever, but it's just not me. I'm like you can tell I'm hyper. I like to be around people. But I get it. Like why not live, the dream we've been promised for the longest time is work from the beach, live wherever you want to live, and it shouldn't
Yes.
constrain where you work. And it's here now. It's finally actually here. That's a reality. And advisors, you're not immune for that. So, well, I want to dive into the community component of this, because as somebody who once founded a community platform, I know firsthand how important it is to seed the community with active participants, right? Like, we can say we have a community and we flip the lights on and nobody's here. It's a thing that could be a community if people actually came, right? So it takes some effort to get that in, right? So how have you and the Client First team gone about seeding the community so that when a new advisor comes in, now you're up and running now, but how did you make sure that when a new advisor would come in, that virtual door, if you will, that they're confident that there's going to be a quality matches and that a community actually exists? What was that effort like to get it off the ground?
It's actually constantly ongoing.
Okay.
One of the things that we wanted to do was to make sure that the community reflects the ideal that we're striving for. So our community is based on the independent channels. So we're not in the wirehouse channels, we're not in the career side, but what we are working with is ensuring that we're attracting the best of the best within each of the different areas that we have. So we have investment folks, we have wealth management folks, we have insurance professionals, again, CPAs, tax attorneys, etc. And our goal was to make sure that they represented the ideal, not only in terms of all the cities that we want to encompass, but also, that there's the full diversity by gender, lifestyle, etc. But we also wanted to make sure that these people were well respected within their communities. So we brought in people, and I've met people that I have never met before and have attracted them to the community because of the strength of what it is that we're putting together. But it is an ongoing process because the insurance and investment communities are not very innovative. There's a reason we are called a dinosaur out there. And that's partially because, we want to be able to see something that is already built before a lot of people in our industry want to be able to step in. So now that we have built this initial community, these people are serving literally as ambassadors for us and getting the word out to other people. And like attracts like. One of the things that I work very hard on at Evozen and within Client First is that we're walking the same talk that we're having. So when I say that we're building by referrals, we are building by referrals. We are building by centers of influence. We are building by diversity, and we are scaling at a profitable pace. And I'm very proud of what we have built in that regard, and know that every single day that value gets greater and greater because more and more people are coming to the platform.
I love it. It's such an interesting concept, right? The community building and maintenance, if you want to call it, make sure the community is thriving, is way harder than people think it is. Anybody who's ever tried to have like an ongoing in-person event where people come frequently and making sure that they show up and that they are good members of the community or the group you got going on, they know it's work, right? I mean, heck, NFL football just had its week 1, right? A lot of people manage fantasy leagues. And fantasy leagues can be a community manager. So if you've ever done a fantasy league, imagine that on steroids. So this is a lot of work. One thing that jumped out at me, just, it's a great parallel, I'll tell you. I was once the head of strategy for a company called Socialware. And Socialware was one of the first entrants in the market to make a piece of software that made it possible for financial advisors to use social media and be compliant, right? So things were archived, supervisable, and the like. And so the advisor could go on social media and know that the compliance officers weren't going to be all mad at them and that they weren't going to get into trouble, right? That everything was all good. And the firms became confident that they could enable that for advisors. So one of my jobs was to, I spent a lot of time flying around the country, speaking in front of groups, evangelizing the concept of like, hey, you financial advisors should be using social media in your business. It's important for you. You want to get out there in the community. What surprised me, and I heard this over and over and over again, at every presentation, somebody would be like, I don't want people stealing my clients. Like, if I get on social media and I start connecting with my clients on LinkedIn or wherever, people are going to be able to see that and they're going to steal my clients. So there was, believe it or not, some mistrust, some paranoia, if you will. And I think it was kind of unjustified. It's like, if you have good relationships with your clients, you shouldn't be worried. But it's really interesting. How do you, at Client First, make advisors feel comfortable and confident that when they join the community, that they can trust everybody involved, and that they should be really active, that they should be giving, and they should be, also looking to participate on other levels? How did you go about that? Because you mentioned something about that in prep, and I really think it's an important thing to hit on here.
It's huge, because it's one of the reasons why people don't use centers of influence, because they are afraid that their client will be taken. So what we did was, from the beginning, we do ask that people wear many hats. So we ask them to choose the hat that they want to put out publicly. And so, for instance, you may have an investment advisor who is registered with a broker-dealer. So maybe they're insurance licensed as well as are able to do investments. If a financial advisor approaches them for insurance because that's the category they chose, then our community says, the protocol says, that you're to stay in your lane. You are to work with them on what they brought to you, not only not take them, but also enhance, the fact that they have already done a good job for that client, reinforce that relationship. And we feel so strongly about it that if anybody comes and tells me that somebody poached their client, I'll immediately remove them from the platform and they will not have an opportunity to come back. This is a platform that is based upon truth and transparency and honesty. And we want people that also encourages them to be able to do the things that they do best. So reinforcing that message that, by focusing on your best strength, you will actually attract more. But there is a second piece to that, and it's something that I personally feel is very important. And that's that I have found that over time, I've had, several decades in this business, but I have found that there's more than enough to go around. So the more that I serve other people, the more they serve me. Sure, every once in a while, someone's going to play dirty, and you have to adjust for that situation and deal with that situation. But for the most part, if you are taking care of other people, they will take care of you. And between that and the fact that we do enforce that protocol as far as making sure that people stay in their lanes and do what they need to do to be the best possible neighbor, we have found has worked really well so far.
I love that approach and the kind of that ethos, if you want to call it that, because number one, I'm a firm believer that most people are really good humans. They're trying to do a good job. They care about others. They want to put their best foot forward. And when you get into a professional environment, I'm going to be somebody who wants to do a great job. And if you're entrusting me with your client, I'm going to do my best because I have an obligation to do so. I should feel that way. But also, I'm hoping to send me more business, frankly, right? If I'm a tax attorney or and you send me a little bit of business, like, this is great. Wow, how many more clients does Julie have, right? Can she send me more of them? That would be awesome. So I don't want to screw it up by going, take her clients because I have this other business. That would just
take a long view for sure.
Yeah, you would hope so, right? So, but it is funny. I mean, I brought this up because I think it is important. I think every once in a while, we all have paranoid brain or worst case scenario brain gets the better of us and we get nervous. And so I bring it up because it's really important. Look, this is an opportunity for you to go out there, expand your business, to scale to the point we talked about before, and grow better and do more of what you love, more of what you're good at, and let some other people handle some of the things you're not good at, or add new services. Now, one of the other things that you teed on, and you've actually mentioned a few different times already in our conversation, is the diversity angle. And this is becoming more and more important.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, look, there's going to be some segment that just gets squirrely. Anytime they hear the word diversity, they somehow feel like it's an assault on them. And we are in a business where it's like 90% dudes. And some of them get really tense when they hear diversity, right? Especially guys who look like me, middle-aged white men. They somehow get tense about diversity. But I promise you, I always frame it from opportunity. We're talking about, we had this one great episode with Laura Gregg on the show. They did this whole diversity study and so forth. It's amazing. I'll link that up in the show notes so if somebody wants to follow up on that. But for me, I always look at it as opportunity here. I want to get your take on why is that a core mission? Because I know it's a core mission for Envestnet, who just acquired Truelytics, and for Truelytics, even before they were acquired by Envestnet, we talk about it a lot. It's something that's very important to us on the show, but also within the companies. Why is that something so important that you want to lead with it when it comes to client first?
I believe it was 2016. I was at the AALU industry meeting which is an insurance leading industry. And they had one of their first conversations on diversity. And in one of the breakfast meetings, I believe it was a female focused meeting, they had a panel and it was talking about diversity. And there was a young man, I believe he was from Northwestern Mutual, and he said something that was just so profound to me. And he said, one of the interesting things about diversity is too many people think that it means somehow excluding a group in order to allow others to rise. And he said, instead, it is that we're just simply divvying up the pie so that everybody's included. And for me, having, gone through this industry, which is male dominated, at one point, I still remember a picture where there was 50 people. And there I was in my little red power suit in the 1990s with shoulder pads out to everywhere. Awesome. And I was this little dot in a sea of navy blue.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I have found through the years is that there's some amazing people out there already in our industry. And they've been in our industry for a long time. They just really haven't been seen. And so we wanted to be able to approach diversity from a full embrace. We wanted to be able to say, everybody deserves the right to be able to have good financial structure in their lives and good financial advice. And some people do feel comfortable with people that look more like them or have lifestyles more like them. And so we want to be able to make it as easy as possible for people to get good financial and professional advice around money. And so we also wanted to elevate the fact that to elevate their profiles. And so even though the search engine is very robust, one of the things it does not search on is gender or skin color or ethnicity or anything like that. And the reason being is that, we want people to be evaluated on their qualifications and their qualities and the areas that they focus and put their strengths within. So what will happen is, especially as the community becomes larger and larger, is you'll put in those search criteria for geography and niches, some people like to say. And, a group of people are going to come up. And if you have a preference to work with a woman, you can choose among the females that are in the group. If you have a preference to work with a particular race, you can choose among the races that show up in the group. But those are the ways that we have to be able to elevate people's profiles and to elevate them on what they have already accomplished, which is, I hope, what we're searching to be able to do in our diversity efforts. One other aspect of diversity that I think that is very important also goes back to that scaling question that that first leg of the platform itself, and that's that an awful lot of women and minorities have found that the larger the company or larger the organization that they're in, the less they have felt comfortable. And so we want advisors to be able to scale profitably, to be able to stay as solo practitioners, or to be able to stay in a boutique firm and be able to grow and be as successful as their counterparts that are in larger and larger firms. one of the things that we have found in our latest research is that the industry has actually done a very good job in terms of attracting more minority groups to the business. We are seeing more women. We are seeing more minorities of all groups. What we're not seeing is them able to stay within the business. So our focus, we chose, because there are already good efforts in that area, we chose to be able to help them stick in the business, to achieve the gravitas that they need to be able to achieve everything that they're trying to do, and do that in a way that allows them to have the best of our business.
I absolutely love it. It's so important as we were talking about. For me, I always think it as an opportunity, right? So if you're an advisor who, again, looks like me, middle-aged white guy, you could recognize, hey, listen, to grow my business, to make my business more vibrant, I need to think about adding some people who don't look like me, who have different backgrounds, right? Because you think about all of the opportunities in your community of like people that you could be serving, and to the, some of the data we see, right? Something like 3/4 of women will change advisors if their husband passes away, right? So because they didn't feel like they had a relationship with the advisor. And so, why would that happen? Well, man, imagine if you had some lady firepower on your team, right? Working with and helping that client. I mean, maybe she'd be more sticky, right? There's studies that show that people whether to people of different ethnic backgrounds or racial backgrounds, or heck, even sexual orientation, the LGBT community, whatever, might feel more comfortable working with somebody who has kind of walked a mile in their shoes. We all kind of have that type of stuff, right? We don't think we do. Like, I know a lot. Some of my peers might think like, oh, I just see people for people. It's like, no, you have selection bias too. We all do. We all have a selection bias, right? And a comfort bias, if you will. So adding that to your team can truly, truly help. But to your point on the other side of it, if you are somebody from a group that that is looking to grow, giving them an opportunity to branch out, add complementary professionals to their team so they can grow and focus on the things that they're best at. And whether that's a financial advisor, who's, a female financial advisor, the lady you talked about, right? African-American financial advisor who speaks Japanese. If you look at her, she's like, man, I've got it. I just need some complementary pieces here. So it's really wonderful. I'm so happy that this is a core part of Client First.
There is one other aspect of it that I think is also important. And that is that if you think about it, there's a two-way street that's also occurring here. Not only are we supporting more women and minorities in the business because they have greater opportunities the more that they're seen and recognized for their value, but for the men who are looking to be able to maximize their value as they're starting into their final chapters and ultimately transitioning out, this is a larger pool of people that have the opportunity to potentially buy their practice too. So there is a very mutually, affable and agreeable route of effort that is occurring here. Both parties can greatly enhance each other by working together.
So smart. I'm glad you bridged that. That's where I wanted to go next, is talking a little bit about the succession planning, right? This concept that is your third leg, right? That you're talking about. And that's 100% true. There's some data that I saw that's like $30 trillion of assets are going to be on the move to women, under women control. McKinsey did this study. But another one that my son is particularly thrilled about is that 60% of current college students are now women. And so that the male share of college educations is dwindling. What does that mean? It can mean scary if we think about like, why are we going to have so many more lower educated dudes out there? Why aren't they seeing college as viable? Okay, take that off the table. When I think about the opportunity that exists when like higher educated women entering the workforce, the leaders of tomorrow, it's definitely going to be more diverse from a gender perspective. Assuredly, with with them coming into the marketplace, being at a higher education than their male peers, right? Higher educational achievement than their peers. We are seeing faster growing demographics in Hispanic and African Americans, and they are the fastest growing communities who are developing wealth or generating wealth and accumulating wealth in this country faster, right? They're just growing faster, right? So these are communities that you're going to have access to, and they're going to be in our business, right? So to your point, for succession, you want to make sure that's working there. What are some other elements that you're doing to assist? What are some other things you're doing to assist with the succession planning, that third stool?
It's very interesting. When Truelytics actually approached me to be able to partner with me, and I was so happy that they did, because I was ready to start taking a look at how we were going to continue to pattern out what we were doing in terms of scaling up and that ultimate transition. One of the most basic things in a financial plan is to be able to get a feel for where you are today. And it's amazing how many people have no idea what the true value of their practice is. And they also do not have an idea of the gaps where leakage is occurring in the value of their practice. And for me, when I saw what Truelytics already had available and where I felt that we could go with a relationship together, was to ensure that we built into our platform an ability for them to get a rough snapshot of where they're at, so that they have the ability to be able to say, okay, I've done well here, but I need to work on these different components, and to be able to offer them a discount in terms of if they really want to dive deep into that. Obviously, Truelytics is head and shoulders in the industry, number one in the industry by Investopedia, for the work that they've done to be able to help match them up with their peers, help them see where it is that they need to be able to grow. And that gives us the ability to create that point A, and then help them craft a plan for their point B and a path to be able to get them from point A to point B. It's exactly what they're doing for their clients. Why shouldn't they do it for themselves?
That is such an important point to make, that we spend so much time, as they say, working in the business and not working on the business. But when you think about your business, as for most financial advisors, it's one of their largest assets that they have. And if they're if they're not wanting to work until they're 90 years old, at some point in time, you are going to transition out of that business, right? I always joke on this show, Father Time is undefeated. He just is. Everyone you come in contact with will stop working at some point in time. Why? Because either they'll drop dead, which is the morbid one, but either you'll stop doing it because you can't do it anymore, or the market will stop wanting to pay you, right? And so one of the things we know about most financial advisors is their client roster looks kind of similar to them in terms of age, right? Five-year circle, right? 5 years older, 5 years younger, as a general rule. And so we do see occasionally advisors kind of age out and just kind of, consume, the business draws down as they get older. But, there's a better way to plan for succession, and connecting with others and putting in a true succession plan that you can see, okay, this is how I'm going to glide out of the business, is a much, much smarter way. And it's better for your wallet too, I think, in the long run.
It is. And, at the end of the day, the platform is called Client First. And it's designed that we're working from a fiduciary standard to be able to do the best possible job that we can for our client.
That's right.
And part of that is that we have our own house in order so that we're able to give our best to our clients. I write for U.S. News, and one of the articles that I did recently was talking about the illiquid assets that are in a client's portfolio. And for most business owners, that is their business. And that can be as much as 85% of their portfolio. And a lot of financial advisors step past that because they don't know what to do with it, because it's not generating AUM currently for them.
Right.
And they don't realize that if they can bring in those centers of influence and really nail that relationship down with their client to be able to address that. And when they are doing that, typically the advisors that have addressed that within their own businesses and their own practices tend to do the best job at that because they understand how significant that is to that client and their client portfolio. The other thing that I have also, talked about before is that some older advisors may not need to necessarily sell their practices. What they may want to do is simply, take as much as 80% of their business and either bring on somebody who can take over that or sell that part of the practice and just maintain, say, their, 20 to 25% of their very best clients. That way they have the ability to reduce the overhead necessary to service that. They're still generating enough income to be able to continue their lifestyle. And now they can work as they choose to at a pattern and pace that matches where they are at that point in life.
Super, super smart. I love it. No, and that is super solid advice because it kind of brings us full circle, right? Do the things you love. Like if you still love these core clients that have been with you for a long time, they're your favorite people to work with, and you love interacting with that relationship, you don't have to give that up. You don't have to sell the whole business and walk off into the sunset. You can keep doing that. Well, let's make sure we get somebody in here to take over the part of the business that is more labor intensive, more time consuming, and maybe involves doing things you don't want to do, right? You might be in that harvest part of your business. I want to maintain these relationships. Somebody else can focus on growing these other books of this business and use that as the jumping off point for their business. So that's fantastic. So we're rounding third, heading for home here. We've had a great conversation. I know a lot of folks are like, this sounds amazing. I want to get rolling on Client First, and we'll have some links here so you can, we'll get you there through the Truelytics partner portal, and also have some direct links to the Client First website. But I wonder if you can give us a few minutes of what would an advisor expect once he or she has signed up for Client First? What does the initial process look like?
Initial process is really simple. Think about it when you were setting up your LinkedIn profile. You put in your basic information, how to contact you, what your school, your education experience is, how long have you been in the business. One of the biggest differences, of course, is that because we are able to search on things like the niche or niches that you prefer, what are your main areas of focus, etc. Obviously, we want to make sure that we capture all your credentials. So you're checking an awful lot of boxes as you go through there. It takes about 10 minutes to onboard. Once you've onboarded, one of the things that you will do is then turn and take your DNA behavioral analysis. And that's a little over 40 questions, and it will generate a report that will talk to you about, this is how you're conveying how you feel about money. This is how you are actually communicating that to your clients. So you immediately get something back that that covers the cost of an annual subscription right away. So we wanted to make sure that in tier 1, which is for every single advisor and professional, whether they're a CPA, a tax attorney, etc., that you got immediate value for every dollar that you put into it. We will have additional tiers where you can, depending upon what your interests are, that you can select. But in tier 1, that first basic community, again, we wanted to make sure that we provided something of incredible value, because that right there will not only help you learn more about yourself, which self-introspection is always good, but it will also immediately be able to help you understand why you haven't always necessarily gotten along with all of your clients. We have a weekly newsletter that we put out that we talk about community connections. In there, what we're showing is various ideas as to how it is that you may want to reach out to a particular client. For instance, we had one recently talking about the fact that we have business owners who are now dealing with the work from home situation. And they may not realize that some of their employees have taken off for states unbeknownst to them. And that can be a problem for them because there are taxing issues related to whether or not they're registered in those states, whether or not they're paying taxes correctly in those states. So right there, a good financial advisor, astute financial advisor, is going to suggest to their client, hey, let's pull in a CPA here that can have a conversation with you to make sure that you're fulfilling all the requirements that you need there. When that advisor then turns and finds that CPA in the area, obviously that's an easier conversation to say, hey, I've got a client right now that I'd like to engage you to be able to talk with. Yeah. So again, there's immediate opportunity for value, but it also goes back to the advisor, goes in terms of how much are they putting into the community. A community doesn't mean that we provide everything. They have to be putting back into the community. They have to be reaching out to those other advisors to help create that value. And that's something that's very important to us, that we're, through that newsletter, we're giving you plenty of ideas of how to be able to create that value for yourself and for your clients, but then also how to be able to create that reciprocity across the entire community.
I love it. And that's such a great way to kind of like cap us off here, is like, if you're coming to a community, come ready to engage. Don't be a wallflower. Don't come just for the free drinks. You want to, you want to come to be ready to participate, right? You're about to get something out of this, but you're going to have to give too, right? You have to, not only fill out all your forms and check all the boxes and so forth, but once you're in there, be an active participant. And that's how you get the most out of it as well. Listen, this has been a fantastic conversation, Julie. I really enjoyed having you on the show. We'll get your, all your contact information linked up on the show notes and make sure people can connect with Client First. Thank you very much. And this is great.
Mike, thank you. I really appreciate it. And this has been fun.
Thank you very much for listening to and/or watching this episode of the Modern Financial Advisor podcast. It's always fantastic to have you with us. Julie Pinkerton and the Client First solution. Absolutely amazing stuff. I am so stoked about this solution because, as you hear me say a few different times, like, this is really needed. Most financial advisors don't have all the skills they need in order to build a scalable, sustainable business that serves their clients holistically, right? Most financial advisors only do a slice of what a client needs as an individual professional. And filling out your team, whether that team is a whole bunch of employees under one roof or having a bunch of partners, right, that each do their own little thing, but you manage a relationship with your client. Fantastic, fantastic stuff. Wonderful having Julie on the show. As I mentioned at the top of the show, please do make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform and swing by Truelytics.com and check out the new branding I mentioned and also how things have changed since the InvestNet acquisition. Really, really cool stuff. And while you're there, click the little contact form. We'd love to hear from you. Send in your topics or guest suggestions. Love to have them in our inbox. All right, that's all I have for you today. Please do make sure you're staying safe and be nice to each other. We'll see you next time on the Modern Financial Advisor podcast. See ya. Bye.